Late at night, the text arrived. My darling, we must discuss the journey. It will now have to wait until next year, as per our decision. The message made my heart sink, and I blinked in response. Put off? It had been years since our last family vacation, and we had spent months preparing for it. Like a child anticipating Christmas, I had rescheduled my workday, planned out my spending, and numbered the days. I contacted my mother without delay. She responded with a sigh. I understand your disappointment, Alyssa, but right now things are simply tight. What a waste of money. Hardly did I swallow. Money problems were real for me. I offered to pay for my own airfare, and had been putting in additional shifts at the cafe to help out with this vacation. However, her delivery was peculiar. It was as if the choice had already been made and my sentiments were irrelevant. It was very upsetting. Sighing, I paused. Perhaps we can locate a less expensive hotel, or cut the travel in half if cost is an issue. She was unsure. If only for an instant. On the other hand, I noticed it. No, Alyssa, she whispered softly, now is not the time. Next year, I assure you, we will accomplish it. Words of assurance. I should have been wiser not to put my faith in it. I was on my lunch break 2 days later browsing Facebook when I felt sick to my stomach. That was it. Here is a snapshot of my parents taken on a beach. As I fixated on the television, my heart raced. Beverages in hand, sun-kissed skin, and the shimmering ocean extending out behind them in the afternoon light. With a heavy heart, I scrolled down. Extra images. Jake, my brother, and his fiancée pose for a photo on a boat, placing platters of lobster before my beaming parents at a seafood restaurant. The caption that really cooled me down came next. Quality time with loved ones is invaluable. Spending time with loved ones. However, I was absent. They said the vacation had been rescheduled. With my mind racing, I froze at the cafe counter and locked my phone. My heart yearned for the belief that all was explained. This might have been something that came up at the last minute at work. Perhaps the vacation had been given to them as a present. But I knew the truth in my heart. Nothing had been delayed. My exclusion from the group had only recently been decided. I opted not to contact my mom that evening. I chose not to reply to the post. Rather, I sat quietly and watched as other images came in over the following few days. They swam with the fish. The beach was lit up with bonfires. The two of them created lasting impacts. By myself. Something changed within me as I gazed at each picture. The journey was only one aspect of this. For all the times that I had been an afterthought, this was about it. Every birthday that had slipped their minds. Every holiday when Jake received his heart's desire, and my presents were a distant second. There were countless occasions when I gave up something important for them. Regarding me, though, they were never the same. Cranking my jaw and inhaling deeply, I prepared myself. They assumed I would be too traumatized to speak up. It would be best if I ignored it. However, I had had enough of being the overlooked individual. I had seen the images and they had no idea. A week later they returned home, and I was there to greet them. I also had a strategy. Looking out the kitchen window, I seen my parents, Jake, and the taxi arrive into the driveway. My dad, mom, and Jake all stepped out, their bags trailing after. They appeared sun-kissed and exhausted from their postponed holiday, but joyful nonetheless. In an effort to maintain my composure, I clamped my jaw. I had seen the images and they had no idea. No, not just yet. As soon as the door swung wide, my mom saw me. She called herself Alyssa, her voice being too bright. You were missed, my darling. Are you doing well? To show my disapproval, I crossed my arms. Very busy, I stated rather curtly. As she entered, my dad followed suit, putting his bags on the floor. It's all good. What's up? A brief sour laugh escaped me. Doing work. All I had accomplished was that. They pretended I didn't exist as they worked and scrolled through their photos. Jake spread his arms wide and let out a yawn. Holy cow, I'm drained. You lose it when you travel. Gesturing toward me, he grinned. I trust that you remained steadfast while we were away. Suddenly I looked at him. As we departed, the situation was handled as if it were ordinary. As if everything was fine. As if I hadn't wasted the past 7 days dwelling on their treachery. I inhaled deeply. Put a halt to the act. My voice was strangely serene as I turned to face my mom. How was the journey then? She hesitated and blinked. So be it. A brief trip was all we needed, you know. Just your average day. Liar. For their benefit, I retrieved my phone, unlocked it, and angled the screen in their direction. Album of photographs. A selfie on the beach. On the water. The formal meal. And it was the caption that sent shivers down my spine once more. Quality time with loved ones is invaluable. I cocked my neck. Strikes me as unique. No sound. Complete and utter quiet. My mom chuckled nervously afterwards. The answer is no, Alyssa. My tone was severe. Cold. Never mind. Clearing his throat, my dad spoke. My voice was getting higher as I yelled out. Stop. My dear, it wasn't. Give me the straight scoop. You kept the trip scheduled. You only wanted me out of the room. My mom's face contorted into a look of shame, but she swiftly put on an explanation to hide it. My dear, that is not how it happened. We merely pondered what? I would be oblivious? My temper flared. That the images wouldn't be visible to me? That I would be so naive as to fall for your deceit? Jake scowled and moaned. Apologies, Alyssa. Is this really so important to you? A journey, nothing more. This is merely a journey. I felt a slap from the words. I had intended that. I put money aside for that. That I was supposed to be a part of. It was a no-go for me. The truth may have been told to me by you. You, however, lied. You made me feel unimportant and unworthy of being brought here. Jake mocked. I think you're exaggerating. I chuckled bitterly. Jake, I disagree. At last, I'm telling the truth. My mother came over and extended her hand to me. Excuse me, Alyssa. I drew back. This time it's not a number. They were in need of hearing this. This goes beyond the journey. I've been treated like a complete and utter nonentity on countless occasions. On every holiday, Jake got his heart's desire while I settled for whatever was most practical. No matter how many times I prioritized you, you never seemed to notice. My voice quivered as I swallowed. I naively believed that I could earn your love and acceptance if I only put in the necessary effort. However, I was never really. Everyone remained silent. At last, my mom let out a sigh. We don't love Jake more than you, Alyssa. In a mischievous grin, I escaped. Even if you don't, it seems that way. Still no word. That concluded my response. Nodding, I let out a little breath. I understand. After that, I silently retrieved my purse and made my way to the exit. Alyssa, what's your destination? Dad gave me a call. I turned my back on them. Somewhere I am genuinely desired. I departed thereafter. Prioritizing my own needs was a first for me. Their messages kept ringing my phone for days. I had finished repairing things though. This time they wouldn't need my help to figure it out. I chose not to respond to their calls. Their communications were unanswered by me. Not only that, but I was taking my time to figure things out, which was a first for me. Ignoring them felt uncomfortable at first. Like a long-lost habit, the shame silently crept into my thoughts. Perhaps your reaction is excessive. Consider letting it go if you want. Still, I'd keep in mind that moment. The cancellation notification message. The pictures they posted on Facebook of themselves having fun whilst I was gone. The falsehood they uttered carelessly. Out of nowhere, the freedom-inducing stillness enveloped me. Their messages had changed on the 5th day. When they initially tried to reassert their dominance, they were harsh and unyielding. Dear Mother. Hello, Alyssa. We should discuss this. What you're doing is exaggerating the situation. Dear Father. Doing nothing will have no effect on us. Get in touch with Mom. Hello, Jake. Get over it, Alyssa. It's childish of you. Indignation escaped me. Timeless style. They felt no remorse. Their only request was that I cease making them feel uneasy. The tone of their text changed, though, when I chose not to respond. Dear Mother. I implore you, my darling. Our hearts long for your presence. Your pain was never our intention. Dear Father. Things could have been handled better. We should talk. The one that almost caught me was the next. Dear Mother. I am very sorry, Alyssa. Your anger toward us keeps me awake at night. It was almost a response from me for a split second. Nearly there. On the other hand, a question sprang in my mind. Would they have been honest with me if I hadn't seen the pictures? Did they ever feel any remorse? It was very obvious. As a result, I silenced my phone and allowed it to remain silent. It was challenging. For a long time, I was the one who would initiate contact. The one who made everything okay again. Those who attempted to justify their actions. Therefore, it was awkward at first to sit in quiet, maintaining my boundary. But something became clear to me as time went on. Because they were homesick, they weren't trying to get in touch. Their longing for my presence in their life was the reason they were contacting me. Those who mediate disputes. Maintaining calm. The unassuming bystander who failed to create a stir. They were at a loss as to what to do with me now that I had refused to be that person. I did something completely new a week following their return. I planned a getaway for the weekend. Not a lot. A secluded mountain cabin, distant from civilization. I laid out my belongings, retrieved my keys, and set off, keeping my intended destination a secret. I wasn't requesting permission this time. I wasn't anticipating being invited. Life was all about me. Amazingly, it felt great. My phone was flooded with missed calls and texts when I returned. However, I took my time answering. I still hadn't readied myself. Reason being, I was prioritizing my own needs for the very first time. Plus, I wished I could savor the sensation for just a bit longer. My habit of disregarding them was new to them. Thus, they arrived at my door as soon as my quietness persisted for an extended period of time. Plus, I was prepared. It was inevitable, I knew. My parents' insistence that I respond to their phone calls, texts, and guilt trips made it clear that they would not tolerate any hint of disengagement. So I wasn't taken aback when I heard a knock on my door that Saturday afternoon. As I put my coffee down, I inhaled deeply. I was able to keep my composure. No, my pulse wasn't pounding. I was all set. My parents were there on my doorstep when I opened the door. Their appearance was altered. No rage. Very humble. Not picky. Nervousness was evident on their faces. As she slipped her purse under her arm, my mom whispered, "Alyssa, would it be okay if we entered?" I rested my weight on the doorframe. So I said evenly, "Do you intend to pay attention? Alternatively, to merely explain to me why my anger is misguided?" Heaved a heavy sigh, my dad. "Let's have a conversation. Speak up." Their features were among the first things I looked at. I wasn't told to let them in by them. Unlike in their texts, they weren't ignoring how I was feeling. It was a question. It was novel. I moved to the side. "Okay," I responded. "Please come inside." Inside the living room, I guided them. The atmosphere was heavy with unspoken things. Sitting on the couch with her hands clasped in her lap was my mom. My dad seemed uncertain about his place. He remained standing the whole time. I crossed my arms and waited across from them. At long last, it was my mother who broke the ice. "This is my first day here," she confessed. I stated unflinchingly that the truth is a good place. A reflexive reaction fled her. Then my dad blew out his nose. "We made a mistake." I squinted. His statement caught me off guard. My mother lowered her gaze to her hands. "Our statement that the trip had been delayed was false, Alyssa. Just say no. There is no evading it. This is the reality." My jaw clenched as I swallowed. "Why?" "I imagined it would be easier," she finally said after some hesitation. No sweat. Same as when she had texted it to me. A knot formed in my jaw. Quieter for whom? No sound. "I pushed for you." "Regarding Jake?" I chuckled bitterly. For the simple reason that it was incredibly difficult for me. With a gentle touch, my dad wiped his face. "We were surprised by how much it hurt you." Sneering, I disagreed. Totally without consideration. My mother's voice quivered. "We were hoping you'd get it." Get it? It was the exact same word they'd used in their correspondence. That meaningless word. I stooped down. "Verify everything for me." "Did you really think I would have ever guessed without seeing those photos?" They remained silent. My response was that. A knot formed in my throat, but I choked it down and kept my voice calm. "Have you ever experienced anything similar? Seeing how much fun you're having apart from me? To think that my existence was completely disregarded?" A twinkle of shame appeared in my mom's eyes. "Dear Alyssa, you are loved." It was a no-go for me. That is not how you treat the people you care about. With a sigh, my dad rubbed the nape of his neck. "My darling, we let you down. We ought to have been forthright." Both he and my mom became fixed in my gaze. "Who brought you here exactly?" I inquired. "In order to express regret? Or just to cheer yourselves up?" Their movements were hesitant. "Both," my mom responded. Well, at least it was truthful. For quite some time we did not speak. My mom finally admitted, "I don't know how to fix this." As I let out a long breath, I could feel the burden of always coming in second. And a realization dawned on me. Fixing it wasn't necessary for me. All I wanted was for them to realize that nothing will ever be the same again. I confess that I am similarly clueless. Nonetheless, I am aware of this. I will not take it upon myself to resolve this matter for you. My dad slowly and clearly nodded in agreement. It was my mom who wiped her eyes. Our next move is unclear. Our eyes locked. It's decision time. They believed that expressing regret would suffice. Apologies, however, cannot undo years of being ignored. They were given a second chance to demonstrate their willingness to reform. It was simple to apologize. Change? It was quite challenging. I did not feel relieved when my folks left that day. It seemed like nothing had been fixed at all to me. They were the ones who had admitted guilt. They had expressed regret. Apologies, though, were not new to me. The story that had always been told was different by their deeds. Oh, and this time, words didn't pique my curiosity. That was my demand. I never before did I not make an extra effort to initiate contact. Good morning, I neglected to text them. Life updates from me were non-existent. I neglected to inquire about their needs. They were forced to do the task for the very first time. Plus, initially there was no change. Time went by. Next week. The following two. There it is, I thought. I required that as evidence. To put it simply, there was zero effort if I wasn't doing it. It was my fault. I was expecting it. It was still painful, though. The third week was when things really began to change. My mom called on an arbitrary Tuesday. The call went to voicemail. An SMS followed. Dear Mother. Hi there, my love. Lost in contemplation of you. Wishing you well. I wanted to turn a blind eye to it. To maintain a safe distance. On the other hand, I was hesitant because I still hadn't seen any indication that they cared. My response was delayed. I chose to wait instead. My dad also texted the following day. Dear Father. You are missed, my dear. We should have supper together sometime. Emotions crashing inside me, I stared at the message. I wasn't prepared to let them back in, but I was impressed that they were making an effort. Dinner was agreed upon. The reason being that not everything was excused. Not because I was prepared to act as if nothing had transpired. I had to check their seriousness, though. We convened at a serene eatery. Our little trio. Jake did not appear. I could tell they were paying attention just by looking at that. We took a seat. My parents haven't asked me how I am doing in years. Unrelated to Jake. Unrelated to the workplace. It has nothing to do with whether or not I could be of service to them. I am the only one. It seemed sincere, but I couldn't tell if they were attempting to mend something that was already broken. However, they were paying attention for the very first time. Then what about that? It was novel. My mom cleared her throat halfway through dinner. Her words were deliberate because they conveyed how much you had been on our minds. Regarding the way we have handled you. Quietly, I drank from my glass. She kept going. Plus, we just realized that. We thought you didn't need us as much as Jake did. We didn't have to work as hard since you were robust and self-reliant. Our eyes locked. What comes next? She choked. Turns out that was incorrect. It was just a quick peek at my dad that I made. There was a nod from him. Alyssa, we can see it now. Indeed we do. For a split second I was at a loss for words. Why? Because I had waited my entire life for those exact words. Part of me refused to believe them even after all this time. No, not just yet. After supper something had changed. No, not in a big, miraculous way. That is, in a way that suggests they might be serious this time. There was still a great distance to cover. However, this time it was they who were the pioneers. For the time being that was plenty. However, everything was still merely words. Furthermore, they would need to demonstrate their sincerity in order to rectify the situation. More than I had anticipated, dinner had gone well. I wasn't innocent, though. I was aware that a single encounter, be it over food or conversation, could not erase the years of being ignored. I was not seeking an immediate solution. Another meaningless apology? Not what I was hoping for. If my parents were serious about making a change, they would have to show me. After waiting a week, the first true test emerged. My birthday was that day. Our family's birthdays had never been fair. If history taught me anything, it was always an event to celebrate Jake's birthday. He could have dinner reservations at whatever posh restaurant he desired, as well as parties and gifts. Mine? A playing card. I might even get a call, should they have recalled. Thus, I promised myself that this year I would not set any expectations. I won't care, I told myself. Still, I hoped, or at least a tiny bit of me did, when I awoke that morning because I wanted to think they could change. They remembered this time. Someone came knocking on my door at precisely 10 o'clock in the morning. As I put my coffee down, I scowled. It was completely unexpected. Standing there with a cake in their hands, my parents greeted me as I opened the door. I gasped for air. This was their first time doing it. With a cautious smile, my mom wished me a happy birthday, my darling. Then I blinked. Do you still recall? A little laugh escaped my father's lips. We did, of course. Suddenly, I started to believe them. Not only that, but they stayed after delivering the cake. They accompanied me. All day, in fact. None of it was very noteworthy. Enjoying a peaceful afternoon at my apartment, meeting up with friends and family, and indulging in a slightly overly sweet cake that was uniquely my. Farewells were not hastily arranged. I never felt like I was only a necessary evil. They seemed genuinely interested in attending after a long absence. Until it came to pass, I had no idea how critical that was. They demonstrated it once more a few weeks afterwards. At work, I was required to give a lengthy presentation, and I'd been anxious about it for weeks. I had casually brought it up during dinner one night without giving it any thought. My mom texted me, though, on the actual day. "You are going to do fantastic, Mom. You are on my mind today." My dad also gave me one. "Please keep us updated on how it goes, Dad. I will always be proud of you." Quite a while passed as I just stared at my phone. This was their first time doing it. I wasn't accustomed to their meticulous attention to detail. And yet see, they stood, making an effort. It was far from flawless. Even still, there were times when lapses into old patterns occurred. On rare occasions, Mom would still find herself apologizing to Jake. Even now, Dad has trouble using more than a few words to describe himself. So what's the catch? Their own actions were caught. When they floundered, it was obvious to them. Plus, they made an effort to improve. Then what about that? That was important. A few months down the road, my mom gave me a call. Not for any specific reason. Having a casual conversation instead. She let out a sigh while we were talking. "I understand that regaining your trust will require some time," she remarked with care. My heart sank. Yeah. Moment of silence. Then, "Alyssa, we will not give up. Our devotion to you knows no bounds." My throat constricted. I trusted her for the very first time. However, I experienced a sense of significance that had before eluded me. Nothing changed in a day. Even now, there are times when I feel like the world is ready to crumble, so that my folks can revert to their previous ways of behaving, to make them forget, attempting to quit. Years though went by. Time passed. Plus, they continued to turn up. It was far from flawless. It required effort. However, I experienced a sense of significance that had before eluded me. My phone buzzed one night while I sipped tea on my back porch. Yes, it was Mom. Certainly not a concession. Absolutely no scapegoating. Just plain old text. "Dear Mother, you are on my mind. How is this week treating you?" Fixated on the screen, I gazed, as a comforting sensation settles into my chest. Reason being, 12 months ago, that message would never have been born. Another surprise arrived a few weeks down the road. The money for the vacation had been building up for some time. An individual getaway. To myself alone. Little had I mentioned it to my family. The main reason being that I preferred not to address their viewpoints. My dad, though, eventually inquired, "So when's your trip?" After dinner one night. I squinted. "You are the one. Does anyone recall?" His smile contorted into a grin. "Of course. Italy, isn't it?" It was my mom who gave the signal. "Just the other day we were discussing just that. Is there anything I can assist you with? Are you done packing? Making preparations?" I gave them my whole attention, holding my breath for a catch. However, not a single one. Because they were hoping for compensation, they weren't donating. Their genuine desire to be a part of my life was evident in their generous offer. Then what about that? It was novel. In the hours leading up to my departure, Jake texted me. I debated not opening it at all. Still, the allure of discovering more prevailed. Hello, Jake. Your mom is absolutely terrified of you going on an alone trip, but she won't admit it. What a character she is. Indignation escaped me. As usual. Afterwards, still another note arrived. Hello, Jake. It's true you're truly doing it. Being free to live your life as you choose. I was on the fence before responding. I am thrilled. Sure I am. His last message didn't come until after a considerable delay. Hello, Jake. Sister, that is very impressive. The burden of the past year became apparent as I disembarked from the aircraft at Rome. I had lived my entire life anticipating this moment, awaiting the arrival of my parents. Here I am, patiently awaiting their inclusion. I long for the day when my importance will no longer be overlooked. But I was no longer willing to wait. It was me making the decision. Their approval was no longer necessary because I had created a life for myself. And in doing so, they had figured out how to be there for me when I needed them. I was enjoying a few days of my trip at a cafe when suddenly my phone started buzzing. For the whole gang. Dear Mother. Hey, we spotted your most recent images. I am in awe of Rome. Remember to give us a call soon. Our hearts long for your presence. This made me laugh. It wasn't that I required their blessing. It was rather that, for the first time, they were doing more than only uttering the words. They meant them was their intention. That was sufficient for the very first time in my life. Loving someone shouldn't be a begging matter. Being included shouldn't require any effort on your part. If those around you fail to recognize your value, then prioritize yourself. Why? Because there are moments when people take attention the moment you stop trying to be noticed.